Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege for us to support this event. We're a company that really do like to get in amongst the grassroots of technology, so wherever there's a user event and it's relevant to our kind of domain, then we like to sponsor that and come and talk to you and mingle and get fresh ideas. So my name is Jeff Day and I run the business here in Europe, and I'm also have a huge pleasure and privilege to work with my colleagues. To my left, Mr. Dan Richins.
Thank you. Is that on? Yeah, this one? This one on? Yeah. So Dan Richings. I'm the VP of Solutions and Support at Adaptiva. Joined Adaptiva about 3 years ago, and then before that, I've come from a config manager background, not quite as far back as some of the other MVPs in the room, but sort of the 2003, SMS 2003 days.
And James?
Yeah, I'm James Pitcher, Director of Global Support at Adaptiva. I've been in IT for about 16 years now, previously desktop, infrastructure support and automation type roles.
We've got it in disco mode.
Yeah. So we'll just run just agenda for today. We'll just give you a brief introduction who Adaptiva are. Has any of you heard of Adaptiva before? Hands up. Quite a few, great. And then we're going to cover today just a brief overview of the state of endpoint security landscape and what the kind of regular challenges are. And then we'll talk about how our solutions can help orchestrate and automate endpoint health and security using our workflow engine, and maintaining OS health and security using Adaptiva Client Health. And we'll show you some neat features of how we can integrate those and with our what we call foundries and APIs, and we'll have a bit of a Q&A session at the end.
And just a few more moments on who we are and what we do before I hand over to the guys to take you through the presentation. Robert mentioned earlier, I think SMS 2003. The CTO and founder of our organization, Deepak Kumar, was the chief systems engineer on that before he set up Adaptiva now 14 years ago. We're a small company, less than 100 people, but we do span the globe. We have quite a considerable UK presence. Some of us are here today. You'll notice us by our blue shirts. We thought we'd wear them not only for the darts, but for something that you can recognize us by if you want to come over, introduce yourselves, and ask any questions or any other topics that you think that might be relevant or interesting. We are privately held. We are pragmatic in the way that we grow. So as I said, we're not out to dramatically change the world by changing our fortunes. We really like to work with you guys that are at the coalface of this industry and hopefully engineer solutions that make sense. Our platform, you may recognize, supports both one-site and client health. It's an orchestration platform that lends itself to advanced peer-to-peer content delivery and advanced endpoint security and compliance. And we have won many awards for these two products. Some of them are written across the bottom of the screen, as you can see. We've won some more recent ones, and we'll be very happy to share some details of those with you in a moment. Just another moment from me. I guess this is the vanity slide, as they say. Yes, we work with some of the largest companies on the planet, deploying content and securing endpoints to over many hundreds of thousands of devices within a given enterprise. But it's really important for us to say that we work across all scales of customer. We're just as delighted to help somebody that's got problems and issues with 50, 100 devices. And many of our customers are of that kind of profile. So it leaves me to say, don't be shy. If you think you've got an issue or a challenge you think that the guys can help you with following this presentation, it matters not to us whether you've got a few dozen deployments and devices or many thousands. It's about helping you at the end of the day that we're really interested in what motivates us. So I'm going to leave you with the guys to take you through the presentation, and I really look forward, James will give you some more information on our event later, even if you stop by just for one beer or a soft drink. We've got some food available, and we hope to see you later. I'll pass to you guys now.
Thanks, Jeff. So when we normally come to these events, we normally look to talk about our one-site product, our content distribution engine. But we're going to do something a little bit different this time. We're going to be talking about client health, and in particular, health and security. And you can't really have one without the other. So devices need to be healthy in order to remain secure. They need to be, we need to make sure that services are running, that things like the config manager client are healthy, that software updates are installed and compliant, in order for that machine to remain secure against outside threat. And also, machines need to be secure from these outside threats in order to remain healthy. And you get an intruder inside your network, and they're stopping services, they're corrupting the operating system to make it more easily to penetrate the rest of the network. So, these health and security go hand in hand. And there is a global shortfall of cybersecurity experts, and the average cost of a security breach these days has been found to be in the region of around, $4 million, so about 3.1 million pounds. So it is a challenge, and it's a big issue for companies, and it's an important topic to discuss. So we just want to talk a little bit about how we try to address this.
Another challenge is, obviously, with security teams, they need to work more closely with the IT operations teams. So security members are finding out these vulnerabilities, understanding what's kind of going on, and finding issues that could be relevant in your environment, and usually typically throwing that over the fence to the IT operations team. And you have to work out, is this a problem in our environment? How do I detect that? And how can I fix that as well? So making sure that these teams work closely together and have a common tool set is becoming more valuable.
So what we'd like to talk about is our product. It's called Client Health. Now, despite the name, it goes kind of beyond just health of device. It's a health product, it's a remediation, it's compliance, security, and under it all, it's quite a powerful automation and orchestration framework. So we can build complex workflows visually, so we don't have to write any code, we don't have to know scripting languages or query syntax. When the question was asked earlier, there were a few hands for Orchestrator. So people familiar with Orchestrator, used Orchestrator in the past. Think of this workflow engine that underpins this product as a bit like an orchestrator for both server and client. So we can design these visual drag and drop workflows and then run them as health checks on clients. Despite the name as well, one of the common misconceptions that we have around the client health product, people ask, okay, so which client is it? Is it the config manager client? Is it the Adaptiva client? Yeah, what client are we remediating the health of? And it's actually endpoint health. So any endpoint health security issue, we can troubleshoot, diagnose, and hopefully remediate. And we do this through the workflow engine. I'll go into a proper demo of this in just a second. But on the right-hand side, we've got an example workflow, and then on the left, we've got a sample of some of the activities that are available within the product. And the activity list, there's only some of them shown on here, but we've got about 195, just under 200 activities built in. And you can do almost anything you could think of. Just some of the ones on the list there, things like file system, registry, SQL, DNS, log file parsing, running commands and command shell. And if there are activities that we haven't got built in, we do support the ability to create custom activities as well, based on things like VB script, batch file, batch shells scripts, Java invocation, and PowerShell. So if you've got existing scripts that you want to incorporate into this, we can do. And they support both two-way interaction, so passing into PowerShell, passing back out, and using some of the logic of the workflow engine. So we'll do a quick demo. We'll just flick over into the lab, and that's not good. RDP session's dropped, so give me a second. That.
Would have been a very short presentation if we can.
Yes, it would have been a very short presentation. 5 days, 1 hour, that'll do. Okay. Now, I haven't been on the Zoomit course, so you'll have to excuse me. My Zoomit skills are a little bit lacking. Hopefully you can see most of what we've got going on, but I will try and zoom where I remember. This is the workflow platform, and we can create either a server workflow that executes on the Adaptiva server or the SCCM primary site server, or we can create client workflows which execute on any endpoint. This is an example of a client workflow, and then as I say, we've got over 195 different built-in activities that we can just drag and drop. So for example, if we wanted to do something with the file system, we just type file in here, we get a filter, and then we can just drag file system operations. If it functions properly, just drag that on there. And then on the right-hand side here, we can choose which operation we want to perform. So hopefully you can see it without me zooming. Sorry about that. So what do we want to do? Do we want to create a folder? Do we want to create a file? Copy files? Delete a file? So let's say we want to create a folder. Just select that, and then which folder do we want to create? We can hard code this in here, ctemp my folder, or we can specify an expression, so passing in something from one of the previous activities, for example. Same sort of thing if we want to do something with registry, just drag on a registry activity. Again, which operation do we want to perform? Do you want to get a key, set a value? Maybe you want to set a value. Okay, which hive is it? HKLM. Which subkey is it? And what type of value is it? Is it a D word? Is it a string? And then we can add lots of other activities, log file parsing, event logs. If we want to add some logic to this, anyone who's done any kind of scripting, programming, be familiar with some of these concepts, some logical flow control components. So if we want to, for example, put on an if statement, we just drag on an if statement. And then we specify the condition, which can be any Boolean true-false condition, so 2 equals 3, for example. And if 2 does equal 3, then we'll go down this true node. Obviously, it never does, so we'll go down this false node. And then we can nest these, so we can have multiple if statements in here. Maybe we'll have a while loop. Maybe we'll have a switch case. And we can just build up quite a complex logic flow using these activities and do some quite complex sort of concepts like parallel execution. If you ever tried to do multi-threading in things like VB script, even in managed code and PowerShell, it can be a little bit challenging at times. Just drag on 5 threads, add different activities inside each of these threads, and then what will happen is they'll all execute, and then once they've all completed, we'll go on to the next activity. So let's put this in sort of a real-world example. And the use case I'm going to give is, let's say it's a malicious user has gained access to the network. They've started running executables, and there's a known process that we want to find and terminate. So we obviously need a new workflow for this. And quite simply, what we want to do is just detect whether a process is running. So we can type in process. We've got is process running, where I can drag that in there. Specify the name of the process. Now, when we're running these, I can pass this through as a runtime property. So there's a form builder built in, and I can specify a form and pass through the name of the property in the form at runtime. For the purposes of this, keeping it nice and short, we're just going to hard code it, and we'll just say that it's notepad.exe just so that we can test this. Check by process by name, not ID. And process name is notepad.exe. And then we want to evaluate whether that process is running, so we'll add an if statement. And here we'll say, is process running dot result. And it's dot notation, so exactly the same as you would with other programming languages. It's just the name of the activity, dot, and then the property, so the result property. And then if the process is running, that's bad. So when we go into this true node, what we want to do here is set the result of this workflow, as in the execution status of this health check, to to false to indicate that it's bad. So true, good, false, bad.
The great thing about that expression builder as well is that whenever you type anything in there, if the syntax is incorrect or you have a dot in the wrong place or anything like that, it highlights it, so we check in the syntax as you type in it. So I know I've written scripts in the past and there's been a problem and what's wrong? And I've just missed a comma or a space somewhere.
Give the workflow a name. So we'll just call this check for malicious process and then save it. Okay, so now we've built our check. What do we want to do if that process is found to be running? Well, we can build in a remediation. We'll keep this one nice and simple. We're just going to terminate that process if it's found. So what we're going to do is just save this one, and we'll say terminate malicious process. So now we've got a copy, terminate, and instead of just setting the output, we're going to actually kill that process. So if the process is found, what do we want to do? We want to terminate it. So again, select the operation, kill process by name, and here I could type notepad.exe again, but instead I'm going to pass it through from is process running. So we can do is process running 1 dot process name. Okay, and here what I'd probably do if I was building this out properly is I'd add conditional logic as well, just to see if the process had terminated, if that process terminator ran successfully. And then what I can do is I can turn those two workflows into a health check, which can then be deployed to clients. So I'll create a new health check. So I'll call this one check and remediate malicious process. Malicious process. Workflow is over here. Process. And then I can optionally give it a remediation. So we can run this in check-only mode, where it just goes out and says, okay, come back and tell me any machine in the environment that's actually got that process running. But we obviously want to terminate it as well. So we'll specify a termination. And just down below here is where we specify a form. So we can pass through a form where we can give it the input.
Can you commit this to Git?
To what, sorry?
To Git, so that you have version control,
Not.
authorization, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Not currently. We can do sort of version control within the product itself, but not externally at this time. But, it's a good idea. So we'll save that, and then we can then deploy it. Now we've got a couple of different deployment options. We can deploy to a single device if we were doing this for a test or in sort of a help desk scenario. So an end user's logged a ticket and they've got this particular issue. We can deploy a workflow or a health check to fix that one issue on that one device. We can do it on an SCCM collection or config manager collection. Or we can do a scheduled health check. And this is probably the most common use case, is a scheduled, where we want to say, this health check or these 10 health checks, we want to run them on this schedule against this group of machines. Maybe that's every day, every week, every month, yeah, but let's say it's every day. Every day, 4 p.m., run these 10 health checks, and then you know that if any of those issues have occurred in that day, they get automatically remediated that same executions cycle. For this one, we're going to just do a collection policy, and we're going to target, let's target all systems. Let's have a bit of fun. All systems. I'll just call it malproc. Health checks. Should have my newly created health check in here. And here is where I would specify the name of the process if I had that form. I'm going to choose to perform remediation, and then I'm going to click run. And what this is doing in the background now is it's generating a policy. Policy is about 1 or 2 kilobytes in size. It's sending that policy down to each endpoint. I don't know how many endpoints I've got in this lab online at the moment, but you'll see they'll start to come back in. So it's come back from 25 machines, 63 machines, 103. And what's going on is when they receive that policy, they'll say, okay, well, that policy has an instruction to run this workflow. And it will download the workflow again, which is about 3 or 4 kilobytes in size, execute the workflow, and then send the results back. But what's important to note is that the workflow delivery and even the policy delivery itself of a total of about 5 kilobytes is all going through the peer-to-peer model that we use throughout all of our products. So it's going one time to each office, and then it's distributed locally in that office peer-to-peer. So there's no excessive traffic going across the WAN for the delivery of these. And we're back on 448, and as you can see, we haven't actually failed any. None of these 448 machines have Notepad running. But if I minimize one of these, minimize that one, and just go to any device, just pick one at random, come here, and start Notepad. And then go back to here and rerun. Okay, and then if I'm quick enough, flick back over here. What we should see is, oh, there we go, it's already gone. Yeah, as soon as I click rerun, what it's done is it's reran that same policy, seen that that Notepad XE is running, seen that it's failed the health check, so now it needs to run remediation, killed the process, and what it does after remediation is it runs the original health check again to see whether it's actually fixed the problem. Because that remediation workflow may have ran through successfully, but has it actually fixed the health condition? So it reruns the original health check, much in the same way as sort of detection methods work in SCCM. So if we go back now, we'll see that we've got one failure. And then we can report on this, and we can show some reports if needs be. So just going back to the health checks, so far I've shown the creation of a new health check and a remediation. We also have built in over 100 health checks that come shipped with the product that can do well, everything you can see here. We'll bring up a slide in a set that shows the categories, but everything from bits through almost every conceivable thing to do with the config manager client, various instant inventory, so going out and getting an instant status for things like which services are stopped, or where a file contains a particular text string, which is quite useful for checking and stringing in an INI file or a particular log entry, for example. Checking where a specific process is running, similar to the example we've just given. Network checks like DNS, name resolution, operating system checks, PowerShell, some of the security checks, things like the major security outbreaks that everyone should be familiar with, Bad Rabbit, WannaCry. When these hit, as soon as the method for detection was announced, we scrambled together a workflow and a remediation, and in some cases, like the Bad Rabbit, also an immunization as well. And then we made those available to our customers so they could not only check whether they're currently infected and remediate, but also to immunize machines against future infection. System checks, although these aren't really checks, they're more sort of action-based, like go to this collection of machines and run a defrag or a disk cleanup, or check whether a reboot's required. A number of different Windows 10 ones for things like Credential Guard, Device Guard, all of the Windows 10 security prerequisites like no execute protection, second level address translation, CPU, TPM, UEFI, Windows updates. We've got quite a lot in the latest release for Windows Update. It's been what we've seen is a large demand for improving patch compliance within many organizations. So we've put together a number of new health checks in and around patch compliance and checking and remediating known issues with the Windows Update agent and things like the scan cycle and all the surrounding components for patching through WSUS and through Config Manager. And then down the bottom here, everyone's favorite, WMI, so we can check and remediate WMI. So if we go back to the slides, that one. Did you want to? mention the categories?
Yeah, so just, I mean, Dan ran through them in the console, but yeah, as you can see how quick and easy it is to create your own workflows and your own health checks, and they can be very complex. So if you've got business applications that have to have a service running, there should be a certain config file there, the registry keys should be set like this. You could create your own health checks to monitor those business applications, make sure all your machines are compliant and got it configured in the correct way. But yeah, we provide over 100 out of the box, fixing all kinds of issues within those different environments. And for example, we've got one for PowerShell execution policies. You want to make sure that those are set correctly in your environment. Something that an admin could change. So an admin's gone onto a machine, turned that off or turned that to a different setting so they could get something installed or something run on the machine. You know, next time that health check runs, it will set it back. And everyone loves dashboards and reports. So we provide a lot of built-in dashboards and reporting out of the tool, which gives you a really good overview in your environment, how the state of client health is, what issues have been detected, what has been remediated as well. We also have things like some timeline graphs. So you can see, for example, that you might have the health checks running on a daily schedule where it's checking for the WMUG, for example, the WMUG service. And it may be that you'll see a spike that we keep detecting issues on a Friday, for example, and we remediate it, we start the service back up again. But that might indicate something in your environment which is causing the WMUG agent or the WMUG service to stop every Friday. So then that gives you that clear, high picture view in order to go in, troubleshoot that and see what's causing that to fail.
And those reports also integrate with the SCCM reports, so they're available in the same view. They're SSRS integrated reports.
And Dan again mentioned it earlier, but essentially with our solution, it's using the peer-to-peer orchestration platform. So the OneSite product, which uses the peer-to-peer engine mostly to distribute content in a fast and efficient way without impacting the network. The client health product also benefits from running on the same platform. So we send out policy, the machines will get asked to download workflows, and it will download those first from local peers, and we'll just have to send that workflow out once over the wide area network. And it's also using our protocols, so if we do need to use bandwidth, we take up all available bandwidth, but we prioritize all of the business traffic over our own, so you'll never impact business traffic. And with client health, these workflows are kilobytes in size, so it's really scales. So the workflow stuff, I mean, I find the workflow stuff really cool. This stuff I found even better. So we also provide a number of different ways that we can extend these workflows and integrate them into other solutions. So maybe it's within system management itself, integrating into things like the SCCM task sequence mechanism, whether it's integrating into other applications, like, for example, I'll show you an example in a minute where we integrate into things like ServiceNow, but also outside of systems management as well, and automating business processes. For example, Active Directory, automating the new hire process. A new employee joins the company, we want to set them up with a new user account, provision them a new mailbox, maybe a new virtual machine. We can use the workflows to not only automate this, but also integrate into these other processes through one of three different ways. First way is through a managed executable, and this is really neat. So what we do here is the workflow, you build your workflow, can contain any custom logic you like. Once you're happy with that, we have a perspective. In fact, have we got enough time to show this? I think we probably have, haven't we? What's our time like?
What is our time like at the moment?
We'll go for it.
We'll go for it.
No one's kicking us off.
So in here we've got a tool foundry where we can create a execution policy, and we can turn this workflow into a standalone executable. So we'll take the example that we did earlier, keep it simple, and workflows. We'll do the terminate malicious process. Now remember, this one's still hard-coded to notepad.exe, but we can optionally give it a password. So when we convert this into an executable, if we specify a password here in this policy, when we go to run this executable, we have to specify that password on the command line. For this, I'm not going to bother. We're just going to say it can run on any client, and it doesn't need a password. So we'll save that. And then once we've got that policy, we can then turn it into a custom tool. We give the tool a name, and we can call this one kill notepad. Tool location, let's put it in C tools. It's a client workflow. It would be, different radio button if we're doing a server workflow. Drag that in there. And then this bit here is quite cool. This allows us to either hard code a machine or allow the user to specify a machine. So when I've got this executable, as I mentioned, it's a managed executable. So I can create a tool on this machine, I can run it on this machine, but I can point it at another machine on the command line. So I can say, kill notepad.exe space machine name. And what it does is, it sends a message to that other machine and say, you need to run this workflow. And that machine then contacts the server, downloads the workflow, executes it, and then sends the results, not back to the server, but to the machine that sent the execution request. So I'm getting the results back on my terminal window from the machine that executed the workflow over there. And what's great is that machine, or any machine that you run this on, they always run the latest version of this workflow. So even if I create an executable, send it to 100 people, anytime any of those 100 executables launch, they're running the latest version. So if a process changes and we want to go in and modify that execution logic, we just change it centrally in the workflow designer, save it, and then it doesn't matter, those 100 machines will always run that latest version. We can also revoke that as well. So if I go in and undeploy that workflow, those 100 executables, completely useless. So if we've retired a process, we can just undeploy, and those executables won't work anymore. One of the other cool things as well is that executable is running under the context of the local system, which means that when I double-click it, it's not running as me. It's basically a wrapper. It's sending an execution request to the local system, the client, and that's running as a local system. So I can design a workflow that does some sort of administrative task. Maybe it's something like installing a print driver, or restarting a service, or making a change to a file in C Windows, for example. And the workflow will run as a local system, so you can grant either help desk, third line, or the end user themselves the ability to run elevated tasks, but without any escalation or elevation of privilege. So, we've got customers that have built entire repositories of these executables that can do administrative tasks like installing a print driver, and they just say, look, if you've got this issue or you want to perform this task, just go to your J drive, double-click on this exe, and it will do that for you without having to grant them local admin permissions for a day so that they can perform that task, or without having to connect to that machine, that user's machine. So really empowering the user to be able to perform these tasks. For this example, I'm going to hard code it to local system, so it will run on the local host. So it will run on the machine that I double-click it on. Here I would be able to specify properties. So in that example, if I'd have had that input of the process name, I could specify that on the command line here as well, but I didn't, so it's only going to work with Notepad, but I'll save that. Custom tools and generate tool. That's been created in C Tools, and then if I go to C Tools, I should have, kill notepad.exe. So here, I'm already in C Tools, kill notepad.exe, run that, and it ran, succeeded, but I haven't got Notepad running. So for now, if I open Notepad, and then run it again, gone. So that's one way in which we can extend the product. Just going back to the slides, the second way is that we can actually turn this, and this one's really cool. This is brand new, so it's not actually released yet. It's in the version that we're about to release. Is we can take a workflow and we can convert it into a PowerShell commandlet. So PowerShell commandlet. Yeah. I won't use the example of kill Notepad because you can quite easily do a terminate process within PowerShell natively. So I'll use this example instead. You give it a verb, and in this case, this is a PowerShell commandlet or a workflow that logs a ticket into ServiceNow. So we give it a verb of log and a name of ticket. So the commandlet would be log-ticket. And started minimizing everything. And then what we do is we specify which input properties we want. And this workflow has 6 input properties, but we're only specifying 3 of them. The other 3 are hard-coded in the workflow. And we're going to specify the user, the title, and the body for this ticket. And then when we click Save on here and Publish, what it does is it sends this instruction out to all of our managed endpoints, and it makes this commandlet available through PowerShell on every machine, or on every machine we target. Which means that as a user or as an IT administrator, I can go to any device, open up PowerShell, type log-ticket. In fact, let's do it. That one. I've got a ServiceNow session here. If I just refresh that, there should be no instance already logged. Nope, no instance in here. So now if I go to any device, the same one we were using earlier will be fine. Open up a PowerShell window. And then I should be able to do log hyphen, and if I do a tab, does it autocomplete? Yeah, log hyphen ticket. So the command's already registered. I haven't needed to go in and import module or do anything. It's aware of the commandlet. Log ticket, user is me. Let's say this is a password reset. And then, please reset my password. Hit enter on that. And what this is doing is it's not running locally on this machine. This machine doesn't need any access credentials or any access into ServiceNow. This is a server-side workflow. So when I run this PowerShell commandlet, it's sending a notification to the server, and it's the server that's using the REST API calls to log this ticket in ServiceNow. So if I go back to my ServiceNow window and refresh, we should have a new incident. And if we go into that, we should be able to see all the details. So it was logged as me, password reset, please reset my password. So we can pass in all of these details. And when I demoed this at Ignite, we used the example of an in-place upgrade for Windows 10. And we have a I mean, I could show it, but we're running a bit low on time. We've got a task sequence that does a Windows 10 in-place upgrade. I caused the task sequence, the actual upgrade to Windows 10 to deliberately fail. And then on failure, I ran this log-ticket to create a new ticket in ServiceNow with the name of the logged on user that ran the in-place upgrade, the name of the machine that had failed, and then the failure reason. And it created that ticket in ServiceNow, and then someone on the help desk could then address that and say, okay, well, we need to look at why this upgrade failed. But we can use this functionality for a number of different use cases. We can grant people that maybe aren't familiar with PowerShell the ability to create PowerShell commands visually without having to write a single line of PowerShell. You mean you've got literally one line, which is log-ticket and the parameters, and all the rest is handled visually in that workflow designer. And then we can give this out to whoever we want, the end user, the help desk, third line, escalations team, whoever. And then just going back to the slides, the third way that we can integrate, we have an SDK and an API foundry where we can create an API and invoke it through a number of different programming languages. So if you did want to use things like C, C++, or any .NET, VB.NET, C#, PowerShell, to call one of these workflows, you can. So you can integrate this into any custom applications that have been developed as well. So there's a number of different, very, very powerful extensibility components available. Oh, and I've done the demo already. Where are we?
Yeah, so hopefully that's given you an insight. Obviously, we've got a lot of information in there, but you can see how quickly it is. You can quickly create these workflows to do any type of automation or client health check on your devices. So just some key use cases, so rapidly responding to security breaches and vulnerabilities, that example of an executable running on the machine, having a tool that you can just quickly spin something up, send out a health check, get instant results back from your machines as to what have the issue, and even automatically remediate those as well. And for enforcing security policies, so if you think of the example, you build machines, you're sending them out, they're configured with BitLocker, they're configured with user access control enabled and things. How do you know that they are still turned on and enabled in your environment? So having those scheduled health checks, which check for those items. If someone's turned off USC, for example, it'll turn it back on again, making sure your devices stay compliant. Make sure they're running and healthy, essentially, is what we're trying to achieve with the client health product. Healthy devices means they are secure. And reducing help desk calls by automating those resolutions. Think about that example I mentioned about a business application, creating a workflow to check that application or even get it configured on your machine. You could create that as a workflow and even make it into a PowerShell commandlet. So someone could just go on any machine, just type in your own PowerShell commandlet, which is going to execute that workflow. So very, very powerful stuff. In that example there, the WannaCry one, as Dan mentioned, that was an example where we put that on our web portal. So these workflows you can export, you can import them. So sometimes we'll create ones, we'll put them on our forums, and customers can download those, and also customers can share them as well.
And then we've got one quite impressive use case where we've got a large global bank that's using this on, it's around 270,000 endpoints. They've created a number of different custom health checks, and then they execute these daily on sort of 20 to 40 machines across all devices. 20 to 40 health checks across all devices. So they're running in the region of around 8 million health checks per day. But as you can see, checking all sorts of different health conditions. And they know that every day, if one of these health conditions arises, it's going to get automatically remediated. And then we've got all the reports and things to visualize that.
So next steps, come and speak to any of us in the team. There's a few of us around, see us in the shirts. If you want to ask any questions about the client health product, the workflow engine, we'll just take questions in a minute if that's okay. And if you do want a free trial or one-to-one demo, just get in touch. You can get in touch with the website, or our email addresses at the start, so we'll share the slides as well.
Not just questions either. If you've got any feedback on this, on what you've seen, we'd love feedback as well, even if it's not something you're interested in, just to know what you thought of it, if anything was interesting or not. So.
And as mentioned earlier this evening, we've got an event just at the Flight Club around the corner. The first rule of Flight Club is don't talk about Flight Club. Only just in this room. We can talk about it. So yeah, just after the event, 5 p.m., please come along. There's food, drinks, darts, and yeah, it'll be great to see as much people as possible. So on that, I'd just like to thank you for sitting and listening to us. And are there any questions? We have one there. So there's just a single Adaptiva server, which runs on your environment. So there's an Adaptiva server component.
Which is basically just a Windows service.
Yeah, just a Windows service that runs on there. And then there's an Adaptiva client, which is distributed to your endpoints.
There's a SQL database,
Yes.
but yeah, you can put that onto an existing server. Yeah.
Okay, so you need to obviously license for standard edition.
Yes, yeah. Any other questions?
In the list of all the standard workflows you've got, it showed there's a workflow to fix the Adaptiva client.
Yes.
How does it do that? The Adaptiva client broken, how can it fix it?
So
it's a version check one.
There's a couple, yeah. So it's more sort of Adaptiva settings rather than health of the Adaptiva client itself. The Adaptiva client is quite lightweight. There's no prerequisites, so it's not dependent on anything. It doesn't need SCCM, for example. Doesn't rely on WMI or C++ libraries or Java, so it's very lightweight. And it's just sitting there as a Windows service and just running and monitoring these other components. So it's quite unlikely that it's going to break. But the checks that you saw, they're configuration checks, so they're making sure that it's configured correctly. No, it's 32 meg of RAM that it's limited to. It won't use any CPU, disk. There's nothing, unless your workflow is configured to do something that's disk intensive, or CPU intensive, then no, the client itself doesn't use many resources.
Thank you. You have one at the back.
Yeah, I mean the one-site client, so the Adaptiva agent is a combined agent for all of our products. So the one-site and the client health. One-site uses the alternate content provider API that Microsoft exposed. Client health doesn't really have any hooks or anything into Config Manager. It's checking the components of Config Manager. But for example, the things like the WMI namespaces, it's checking directly in WMI. Config Manager health, things like management point checks, site assignment, cache size, status message. It's checking whether these things are getting uploaded, but then there's no actual direct integration into Config Manager, so there's no reliance on it. And
So how does it know? Really want to show the SCCM collection label to it, so it will start to
oh, I see. Okay.
From the server
Yeah, that's
side.
the server side. So when we're targeting, the server has this awareness of these Config Manager objects. So there is a synchronization that takes place between SCCM and Adaptiva. And that goes from their database into our database. So we have those objects stored in our database. That's what we use the database for.
Yeah, so we have database integration and SMS provider integration at the server level, just to get those objects.
So is your database almost a mirror of the SMS database?
Not a mirror, no, because there's only certain object types that we're interested in. Collections being one of them for targeting. And that's, for client health, that's pretty much it.
How much of a difference is it?
In size?
No, I'm talking about in the way of data. So obviously, you've got incremental collections.
Yep.
And new devices coming online. What's the trade-off in the way of time between?
Oh no, it's instant.
instant.
Yeah, it's instant.
Yeah. It's instant. Good questions.
Yeah.
Any more?
Any more for any more?
No? Okay. Well, thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thank you
And,
very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.